Our next speaker, when I approached this person, we were like, this person is so versatile. She knows and been involved in so many aspects of software culture and diversity initiatives that really she could speak on anything along that spectrum. So it actually took us a whole week and a half or 2 weeks to get back to her to confirm which thing we really wanted to hear her speak about. And we decided, you know what? Open source is something that we use all the time. Whether we contribute back or not, we try. But we wanted to hear Aleisha's take on it because she has worked and spent so much time making sure that this is a great community, making sure that the spirit of open source remains alive and well and supportive. So please welcome Aleisha Amohia of Koha, of Koha Technical Lead at Catalyst. Thank you.
I te tuatahi ngā mihi ki ngā tāngata whenua o te rohe nei. Nā rātou te mana, nā rātou te whenua, nā rātou te tino rangatiratanga mō kia tonu. E te tuarua, ko ruapehu te maunga, ko wanganui te awa, ko Aotea te waka, ko te ati haunui a pāpārangi te iwi, no Taumaranui me Cambodia me India o, kei te noho o ki te wanganui atara, ko Aleisha Amohia tōku ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hello everyone, my name is Aleisha Amohia. I've just introduced myself with the Pepeha, which is telling you where I come from. I also acknowledged the mana whenua, local iwi of this area, who never ceded sovereignty. So let's get into it. So first off, ko ai o, who am I? I was born and raised here in windy Wellington, but I whakapapa tū Taumaranui in India on my dad's side and Cambodia on my mother's side. In my day job, I'm a software developer and technical lead at CatalystIT. I've been at CatalystIT since 2014. What started as a summer internship turned into my whole career. CatalystIT kept me on part-time while I studied here at Te Herenga Waka or Victoria University of Wellington. I did a Bachelor of Science majoring in computer science, specialising in artificial intelligence, and a Bachelor of Commerce majoring in management, minoring in information systems. It's a lot of words. It's just a fancy way of saying I've got 2 certificates, really. I became full-time at CatalystIT when I graduated from Vic in 2020, so I had one of those lockdown graduations. And then on the side, I also volunteer with a bunch of organisations and initiatives. Most of them revolve around gender equity and in general, just trying to make society better. Ooh. Anyways, enough about me. I'm here to talk to you today about open source software and culture. I'm an open source software developer. CatalystIT is an open source software company. I'm hoping that by the end of this, you all have heard the words open source so much that it'll be in your dreams, and you're going to email me and ask me what projects you can get involved in. I'm also going to be using a bit of te reo Māori in this talk, because this is Aotearoa New Zealand, and we can't have a conference about culture and not hear a little bit of Māori today. So if you don't understand any of the kupu or the words that I use, feel free to talk to me after. But yeah, that's what this is all about, is bringing those words into this context. So sweet as. So what is open source, you may ask? Open source software projects make their source code available to view, to use, and to share. Anyone can come along and read the code, they can copy it, they can turn it into something else, and in some cases they can build upon it and modify it. Open source software projects usually attract a community made up of a range of people, often from around the globe, who bring different experiences and perspectives and share their knowledge, their resources, and their time. Catalyst, where I work, is an open source software company. We provide solutions and support for and with open source software. So this ranges from teams who use open source software for bespoke development solutions to teams focused entirely on the hosting and support of one open source product. Catalyst was founded over 25 years ago and now has around 300 employees spread across Aotearoa, Australia, the UK, Europe, and Canada. Catalyst also provides the only New Zealand-owned and operated cloud computing service built upon open source technology. And we even host the New Zealand Open Source Awards, which recognise and celebrate the outstanding work done with free and open source software and the artistic, scientific, and social outcomes it delivers in New Zealand. I copy-pasted that, obviously. So it's fair to say that there is a market for free software. At Catalyst, I'm the technical lead of the Koha team. So Koha, if you don't know what it is the world's first open source library system, developed originally for Horowhenua Libraries Trust in 1999. And so when I say library system, I really do mean the place where there are books, and you go in and check them out, and there's a nice person behind the desk that says, yes, please bring it back in 2 weeks or something. So I'm going to be discussing open source culture today from my perspective as a Koha developer. The Koha project has been around a really long time, nearly 25 years, and it uses a bunch of programming languages. It's been maintained by teams all around the world. So I think it's got the range and the longevity to give you a good idea of the culture within open source projects and communities. So let's start from the start. As I said, Koha is a New Zealand-born solution for which development started in 1999. Horowhenua Libraries Trust had a proprietary library system with the Y2K bug, and they needed something different. They wanted it to be free, so Koha was actually created as a solution for that. Creating the world's first open source integrated library system took courage, took leadership, and that's exactly what Katipo Communications and Horowhenua Libraries Trust showed when they built Koha. Maybe a little bit of arrogance too. At Catalyst, we're really blessed to still have one of the original Koha developers, Chris Cormack, some of you might know him, and he always starts the story about developing an open source library system with the famous question, how hard could it possibly be? Open source software is often responding to the needs of a community. That means that it's built and fed into by the people and for the people who will use it, which says a lot about the culture, I think, within our projects. People will choose to contribute to a project because, not because it's a fast track to becoming a millionaire or because it's going to impress people on LinkedIn, but because they believe in the kaupapa of the project, the purpose of it. They recognize the need it satisfies and the value that it brings, and they want to be part of that. When I talk to other Koha developers in France or Germany or the Pacific Islands, they just want to know that what we're doing will solve problems for Koha users and ideally not create problems for others and make the product that we're putting out into the world even more awesome. It's never about glory or recognition or massive profitability. For me, that's a demonstration of aroha, which easily gets lost in the fast-paced world of tech, driven by profit and innovation. My introduction to Koha was in January of 2014 when I was 15 years old. I hate this photo, but I use it because it was my journey, but also it's the only time in my life I have looked misleadingly tall. So Catalyst was running an open source software academy, which is a 2-week holiday program to immerse high school students in all things open source. The first week was all about tools and concepts we might need to learn. We learned about Git. Where did he go? The command line, user stories, design tools like GIMP and Inkspace, and a whole lot more. And then the second week was project week, so we'd split into groups and be guided to making our first contributions to a real-life open source project. Obviously, I picked the Koha project. We had a really rowdy group. We were quite disruptive, easily the class clowns of the academy. I'm very sorry to my mentors, who then became my colleagues. But I remember doing some really fun work. We upgraded Bootstrap from 3 to 4. I think I looked at unit tests, looked at, and then closed. But look, we spent barely 4 days inside the Koha code base. But I had so much fun using IRC, attempting to write patches, looking at a very long list of Koha bugs, and hacking away. Over the course of the academy, I became the 247th developer to have a patch pushed to Koha. This was made possible by 2 things. The first being that Koha is maintained by a community of people who genuinely care, who would stay up during our awake hours and their sleep hours to provide support to aid kids in Wellington trying to learn to code. The second is that the open source projects have really low barriers to entry. And this is because they depend on people to keep them alive. There is a stack of Koha documentation telling you how to set up your development environment and what accounts you might need, because they need to make it easy for people to contribute. This is what Manaakitanga and Whanaungatanga look like. As of 12 May 2023, there are 489 individual developers who have now pushed a patch to Koha. There are multiple initiatives every year at conferences and events, and usually at Catalyst, to facilitate new people to make their first contributions to Koha. People with this shared interest gather and get to know each other in an encouraging and supportive and sharing kind of way. We've even done Koha bug squashing sessions with our own customers, so Koha librarians are making contributions to the software they use every day. It's really cool, and it's also very #open source. It also demonstrates Tuakana Teina, where the experienced can awhi or help the less experienced. We can all learn from each other, and in an open source community, we switch roles and share knowledge in this way all the time. The open source development process is quite different from proprietary systems. Bugs and requests for new features or enhancements are logged in our bug tracking system. Then someone will write a patch or a patch set and attach it to a bug report. Then someone from a different organization has to come along and test it. And if it gets signed off, someone who didn't write the patch and didn't do the test needs to test it for quality assurance, after which it can get pushed upstream. If it doesn't get signed off, someone can come back and do more work on that patch set. The development process is iterative, collaborative, and well documented. It can take a village to get even the smallest and most modest of fixes in, and sometimes there are cons to that. One of the biggest features that I contributed to Koha was a recalls feature, which is a type of circulation that's used heavily in academic libraries. So we were first sponsored to develop it back in 2017, and it finally got pushed to Koha in 2022. After years of enhancements, fixes, reworking, feedback, failed testing, and if you can see it at the bottom, 992 comments. So yes, our process means that sometimes things get dragged out a little bit. But truthfully, it encourages quality. This is an example of Kotahitanga. This process allows us to protect the whakapapa of our project, where it came from, and make sure that we never leave things worse off than before, always the same or better. It also fosters a culture where it's okay to ask for help, to get things wrong, to try again, to make it easy for testers to respond to your code, and to build for the edge cases, for the speakers of many languages and libraries of many shapes and sizes who might use our software and interact with the changes that I'm trying to push. Every month I spend working on Koha makes me a better developer. So I've alluded to this already, but a lot of hands go into the development of Koha. Nearly 500 people over almost 25 years have contributed to the code. And Catalyst is just one vendor of Koha. There are also a few organizations in Europe and the United States and Australia and some other places. The special thing is that there is no single organisation who owns or maintains Koha, which is something that can only be done through open source software. Instead, Koha is owned by its users, by its community. So this is a photo of two librarians from Toiomai and Chris Cormack wearing their super librarian capes, which the librarians made for us. In libraries, or at least in Koha, we have a super librarian user, which gives them access to all of the functions of Koha, and also means that we're superheroes. So, when there is a shared ownership and we're working towards these shared goals, that's called Kotahitanga. It also means that there's no one company holding all the cards for the direction of Koha. The project is self-governing. The Koha community has rangatiratanga. We're working together as one to enhance Koha, and we're also making decisions and creating customs as a group. So we decide our own priorities. Finally, I thought I'd mention what it's like to work within an open source software company. Catalyst works really hard to make sure that the open source values that are prevalent in the Koha community also shine through in our office. In the same way that open source software contributions can be incredibly varied, the training pathways in an open source software company are not linear, and the roles I've had are not strictly defined. In my role as a Koha developer, I've organised events, spoken publicly, written blog posts, hosted trainings, developed both the back end and the front end of Koha, improved translations for Koha, supported sales, spun up servers, written automation scripts, and so much more. And I didn't realise until Katrina's talk that maybe it's not just an open source thing, but also a New Zealand thing of doing way more than our job description. But it means that every day is different. And there's always something to work on, and there's always people willing to help. Something about open source is that it's super widely used, even though many people don't know what it is. Firefox, the browser, is open source. If you've ever done audio recording or editing, you've probably used Audacity, which is open source. You might have your own opinions about cryptocurrency, but plenty of people partake, and that's open source. Even the New Zealand COVID tracer app is open source. And even with these everyday examples, to be an advocate for open source software is strangely niche, which means that if that's you, you really have to lean into it. Many of the people I work with are super passionate and opinionated about tech stuff. I've been in spaces over my career where people do tech jobs because they enjoy the work they do in their 9 to 5 and that's it, and that's cool. But that is not most of the people at Catalyst. Open source advocates are the types of people whose passion becomes their identity, and they'll make it known to you. And I was only given half an hour for this slot, but I could probably talk for hours about this kind of thing, and so could they. I am not a developer who works in open source software. I am an open source software developer. That's important to me because that distinction impacts the way that I approach a problem. It impacts the way I collaborate with my colleagues. It impacts the way I write code, and it impacts the way I perceive the tech industry in general. Sometimes we want to separate ourselves from our work, but it's really hard to not identify with something that reflects my own values so closely, especially when I can do that for a job. I'm not saying that open source should be the default and that everyone should use it. Actually, I am kind of saying that a little bit, but that's not the only message I want you to take from this. I really enjoy what I do, and I attribute so much of that to the cultures of the environments I work in, whether that's the Koha community or the Catalyst community. Culture is underpinned by values and then upheld by processes and people. Open source as a concept brings those values that might not come naturally to a tech business sector. But there's no reason that we can't build those values into our processes in every corner of our industry. There's no reason why our tech leaders and the people building our solutions can't embody those values. Tuakana Teina, mentorship, the removal of blame culture, the space to learn, the ability to make mistakes, opportunities to try new things, the expansion of what we think a junior is, a deep belief in the things we're building, pride in what we put out into the world, collaboration, appreciation for how different people with different goals will interact with your build, accessibility measures, iterative development, and a shared investment of a product and a community. These are the things that I want us to learn from the successes of open source software and apply to our tech industry here in New Zealand. I'm about to finish up, so before I do, I want to say thank you so much to the organisers, especially Prae and Cami and Aaron and Tim, who I've just met, who's the bomb. Thank you so much for putting on this event and inviting me to speak. I think an event that encourages tech people to think about culture and society could not come at a better time. So let's make sure that the environments we work in will foster the kinds of solutions and services and stories that we'll be proud of for generations to come. Kia ora.
Aleisha, that's amazing. You're right on the dot and you give just enough time for Q&A. So, any questions?
Right there at the end, you said, and amongst a list of things, expansion of what we think a junior, what was it? Junior is capable of, junior is. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the question was expanding on what I meant by redefining what we think a junior is. So it was kind of talking about what I said about Tuakana Teina. So in Te Ao Māori, we have Tuakana Teina, which is about experienced people supporting less experienced people. But what's important about that concept in Te Ao Māori is that it goes both ways. So the teachers can become the students really naturally, because there's always something to learn from everyone. And I think when we label someone as a junior and pigeonhole them like that, then we're limiting what they can learn and also what we can learn from them. So just redefining what a junior is and what kind of value they can bring to our spaces. Does that answer that? Cool. Thank you.
I'm going to interject there and said I agree completely. A lot of the people who have worked with the grads at Xero knows they're probably better than us. And so, yes, they can totally become our teachers. Thank you. Next question, please. We have room for one more if you have any.
Oh, thought I'd gotten away with it.
It's all right, last one.
Yeah. I think that is a big difference to how we can run we could say a common company, but with open source values on, for example, code, new features implementation, on things like that, like or code. How do you say? Like share the. Sorry, it's hard to think.
Are you trying to ask if there's a way to apply open source values?
Yeah, because a common business company works very different than an open source, probably. So can you identify some common things that you can apply in a common company, like not open source?
Yeah. So how can we embody open source values in companies that don't use open source? Is that kind of the question?
It's not strictly open source, and it has a common
that aren't strictly open source, yeah. So a lot of these values are present in different ways in a lot of spaces. I tried to kind of relate them to Te Ao Māori values, but it's really just about, it's all the same stuff that Prae mentioned were the values for this conference. It was the same stuff that Katrina was talking about. It's just about creating a space where it's safe to make mistakes, where it's okay to get something wrong on the first go, give feedback, and keep working on it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we do every day in open source software development. And what was some of the other stuff I said? And and just mentorship. And I think it all kind of just comes down to having a community, having a shared interest and a shared goal, and working collaboratively toward that. I think if we boil down open source to like the bare bones of it, that's what it is. So there's definitely ways to apply that in companies that don't use open source strictly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Aleisha.